Ridgeview was a quiet, picturesque town nestled between mountains and vast fields. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where the local diner was the social hub, and where crime was almost non-existent. Families had lived there for generations, passing down their homes, traditions, and values. But beneath the surface of this peaceful community, something sinister was about to be revealed, something that would shake Ridgeview to its core. Jennifer Daniels was a beloved figure in Ridgeview. At 35 years old, she was a single mother to a young daughter named Lily, a popular elementary school teacher and an active member of her church. Jennifer had grown up in Ridgeview, and despite a brief stint in the city after college, she returned home to the familiar comfort of small-town life. She had many friends and a close relationship with her parents, who lived just a few blocks away. To all appearances, Jennifer led a perfect, uneventful life. On the morning of March 3, 2021, Jennifer was supposed to drop Lily off at her parents' house before heading to school. But when Jennifer failed to show up, her parents grew concerned. They called her repeatedly, but there was no answer. Jennifer was never late and always kept in touch with her family. Her parents decided to drive by her house to check on her, hoping she had simply overslept or forgotten to charge her phone. When they arrived at Jennifer's modest two-story house, they found her car in the driveway. The front door was locked and the blinds were drawn. After knocking and calling out her name without a response, Jennifer's father, Tom Daniels, used his spare key to let himself inside. What he found sent him into a state of shock. Jennifer was missing. Inside Jennifer's home, there were no immediate signs of a struggle. Her purse, keys, and phone were nowhere to be found, but Lily's toys were scattered across the living room as if she had been playing that morning. The kitchen table was set with 2 plates, as though Jennifer and Lily had started their breakfast but never finished. The eerie silence that filled the house was unsettling, and Jennifer's parents knew something was wrong. Tom and his wife, Carol, frantically searched the house, calling Jennifer's name. When there was no sign of her, they called the Ridgeview Police Department. Within an hour, officers were on the scene, beginning their investigation into what would become one of the most perplexing and chilling cases the town had ever seen. The first 48 hours after Jennifer's disappearance were critical. Police began interviewing friends, family members, and neighbors, searching for any clues as to where she might have gone. Everyone described Jennifer as a devoted mother and teacher, someone with no enemies and no reason to simply vanish. Her colleagues at school were equally baffled. Jennifer had shown no signs of distress or unusual behavior in the days leading up to her disappearance. Lily, who was only 5 years old at the time, couldn't provide much information. She told police that her mother had tucked her into bed the night before, and that she had woken up to find her gone. Jennifer's bed looked as though it had been slept in, but her phone and other belongings were missing. The only clue police had was the fact that Jennifer's car was still at the house, suggesting that she hadn't gone far. Days turned into weeks, and still, there was no trace of Jennifer. The Ridgeview Police Department brought in search teams, combing through nearby forests, fields, and lakes, but to no avail. Posters of Jennifer's face were plastered across the town, and the local news covered the case extensively, pleading for any information that might lead to her whereabouts. But despite the best efforts of law enforcement and the community, Jennifer Daniels had disappeared without a trace. Just as hope was beginning to fade, a shocking discovery was made on March 29, 2021, nearly a month after Jennifer's disappearance. A hiker exploring the dense woods on the outskirts of Ridgeview stumbled upon something unusual, a shallow grave. Fearing the worst, the hiker immediately called the police, who arrived at the scene to find the remains of a woman buried beneath the earth. The body was badly decomposed, but the clothing and personal items found with the remains matched the description of what Jennifer had been wearing the day she vanished. Forensic analysis later confirmed what the town had feared. The body was indeed Jennifer Daniels. The news of Jennifer's murder sent shockwaves through Ridgeview. How could such a horrifying crime happen in their peaceful town? And who could be responsible for such a brutal act? As police began to piece together the final moments of Jennifer's life, they were faced with more questions than answers. The fact that her body had been buried in such a remote area suggested that the killer was familiar with the terrain and had taken great care to conceal the crime. The lack of any witnesses or physical evidence left investigators with little to go on. But as they delved deeper into Jennifer's life, they began to uncover secrets that would turn the investigation in an entirely new direction. As police dug into Jennifer's past, they discovered that her life was not as perfect as it had seemed. Despite her sunny demeanor and strong community ties, Jennifer had been struggling with personal demons in the months leading up to her death. Friends and colleagues revealed that Jennifer had recently ended a toxic relationship with a man named David Collins. David was a local contractor who had met Jennifer when she hired him to make repairs on her home the previous summer. Their relationship had started off well, but it quickly became clear to Jennifer that David was controlling and possessive. Friends described how David would frequently show up unannounced at Jennifer's house, monitor her movements, and question her about her interactions with other men. Despite his charm, David had a dark side that frightened Jennifer. In December of 2020, Jennifer ended the relationship, but David did not take the breakup well. According to her friends, David continued to harass Jennifer, sending her threatening texts and even showing up at her school on one occasion, demanding to speak with her. Jennifer had confided in a close friend that she was afraid of David, but she never reported his behavior to the police. When detectives interviewed David about Jennifer's disappearance, he claimed to have had no contact with her since their breakup. He seemed cooperative and willingly provided an alibi for the day Jennifer vanished. David told police that he had been working at a construction site an hour away from Ridgeview on March 3rd and had multiple witnesses to back up his claim. Despite David's alibi, police couldn't shake the feeling that he was hiding something. His history of aggressive behavior toward Jennifer made him a prime suspect, but without solid evidence, the investigation hit a wall. Months passed, and Jennifer's case grew cold. The people of Ridgeview were haunted by the fact that her killer was still out there, walking among them. The police had no leads, and the investigation seemed to be at a standstill. That was until a new piece of evidence emerged in August of 2021. A forensic team re-examining Jennifer's car, which had been impounded as part of the investigation, discovered something that had been overlooked. A single strand of hair lodged between the back seat and the door. The hair did not match Jennifer's or anyone in her immediate family. The strand was sent for DNA analysis, and the results were shocking. The DNA belonged to none other than David Collins. When confronted with this new evidence, David's demeanor changed. He became defensive and evasive, claiming that the hair must have been left behind when he and Jennifer were still together. But the forensic evidence suggested otherwise. The hair had been freshly shed, meaning it had likely been deposited in Jennifer's car the day she disappeared. David Collins was arrested and charged with the murder of Jennifer Daniels. David's arrest brought a sense of relief to the town of Ridgeview, but the case was far from over. In November of 2021, the trial of David Collins began. The prosecution painted a picture of a man who had become obsessed with Jennifer after their breakup, unable to accept that she had moved on. They argued that David had followed Jennifer on the morning of March 3rd, abducted her, and killed her in a fit of rage before burying her body in the woods. The defense, however, argued that there was no direct evidence linking David to the murder. They pointed out that the DNA found in Jennifer's car could have been from an earlier encounter, and they questioned the lack of physical evidence tying David to the crime scene. As the trial unfolded, more details about David's behavior came to light. Several of Jennifer's friends testified about the harassment and threats she had endured after ending the relationship. One witness even recalled seeing David's truck parked near Jennifer's house on the morning she disappeared, though they couldn't be certain it was him. In a dramatic turn, David took the stand in his own defense. He denied any involvement in Jennifer's death and insisted that he had been at work the entire day. His calm, confident demeanor on the stand left some jurors unsure of his guilt. But the prosecution had one final piece of evidence: a series of text messages sent from David's phone to Jennifer on the night of March 2nd, just hours before she vanished. The messages were angry and threatening, with David accusing Jennifer of seeing someone else and vowing that she would regret it. It was enough to sway the jury. On December 15, 2021, after weeks of testimony, the jury found David Collins guilty of the murder of Jennifer Daniels. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For the people of Ridgeview, the verdict brought a sense of closure, but the scars of Jennifer's death would never fully heal. Her family, friends, and students mourned the loss of a woman who had been taken from them far too soon. Her bright future cut short by a man who couldn't let go. As the years passed, Jennifer's memory lived on in Ridgeview. A scholarship fund was established in her name, and the local school dedicated a garden in her honor. Though her life had been tragically cut short, Jennifer Daniels would never be forgotten. Though David Collins had been convicted and justice seemed to be served, Ridgeview couldn't shake the shadow cast by Jennifer Daniels' murder. The quiet town was scarred by the brutality of the crime, and for many residents, life in Ridgeview would never feel quite as safe as it once had. In the months following David's sentencing, new conversations began to emerge around town. Some believed that David might not have acted alone, while others were convinced that he was only a scapegoat. After all, while David was clearly obsessive and had sent the threatening texts, the case against him had been largely circumstantial. The discovery of a single hair in Jennifer's car had raised enough suspicion, but was it truly enough to condemn him to a life behind bars? One person who couldn't let go of these lingering doubts was Jennifer's best friend, Rachel Burns. Rachel had been one of the first people Jennifer had confided in about her fear of David. She had seen firsthand how toxic the relationship had become. But as the trial unfolded, Rachel couldn't help but feel there were pieces of the puzzle that still didn't fit. In particular, Rachel was troubled by something Jennifer had mentioned in their final conversation before her disappearance. Jennifer had spoken briefly about someone else, a figure she had met during a trip to the nearby city of Fairview, a man whose name she never revealed, but who, according to Jennifer, had been giving her advice on how to handle the breakup with David. Rachel had brushed off the conversation at the time, thinking it was nothing more than a friend trying to sort out her complicated feelings. But now, in the aftermath of the murder and David's conviction, Rachel wondered if this mysterious man had played a larger role in Jennifer's life, and possibly in her death. Rachel decided to dig deeper, determined to find out if there was more to the story. Rachel started by retracing Jennifer's final steps in the weeks before her disappearance. She talked to Jennifer's co-workers at school, hoping someone might have overheard a conversation or noticed something unusual. Most people only remembered Jennifer as her usual, cheery self, but one colleague, a fellow teacher named Mark Ellis, recalled something peculiar. "I saw her a few times in Fairview," Mark said. "I didn't think much of it, but she wasn't alone. She was with some guy I didn't recognize. They seemed pretty close." Mark's casual observation struck a chord with Rachel. Fairview was about a 40-minute drive from Ridgeview, and it wasn't a place Jennifer frequented often. If she had been meeting someone there, it must have been important. Rachel pressed for more details, but Mark didn't know the man's name. nor could he describe him in detail. However, his recollection gave Rachel a new lead to pursue. Rachel decided to visit Fairview herself, hoping that retracing Jennifer's steps might reveal something new. She started by visiting the cafes and shops near the area where Mark had seen Jennifer. Most people didn't remember her, but eventually, Rachel found a barista at a coffee shop who recognized Jennifer's photo. "Yeah, I remember her," the barista said. "She used to come in here with a guy. I think his name was Jared?" They'd meet up here every couple of weeks, seemed like friends, but there was always this weird tension between them. Rachel's heart raced as she listened to the barista describe Jennifer's interactions with this mysterious Jared. The pieces were starting to fall into place. Could this man have been the one Jennifer had mentioned shortly before her death? Could he have been involved in her disappearance and murder? Rachel returned to Ridgeview, determined to find out more about Jared. She reached out to mutual friends, scoured social media, and even visited local bars and restaurants where Jennifer might have met him. After weeks of dead ends, Rachel finally got a breakthrough. A friend of Jennifer's from church, Susan Miller, mentioned that Jennifer had spoken about a man she had met online. The two had exchanged messages for a while, but Jennifer had become uncomfortable with how intense he was becoming. His name was Jared Willis, and he lived in Fairview. Rachel couldn't believe what she was hearing. She had known Jennifer to be cautious and private when it came to her personal life, especially after the ordeal with David, but it seemed Jennifer had kept this relationship from even her closest friends, possibly out of fear or shame. Rachel decided to reach out to the Ridgeview Police Department, sharing her findings with the lead investigator on Jennifer's case. At first, the police were hesitant to reopen the investigation, but Rachel's persistence and the new information about Jared piqued their interest. Detectives began to look into Jared Willis, pulling his records and questioning his acquaintances. What they found was disturbing. Jared had a history of volatile relationships. Several women had filed restraining orders against him, citing stalking, harassment, and emotional manipulation. Although he had never been charged with a violent crime, his pattern of behavior suggested a man who didn't take rejection well, a man who might go to extreme lengths to regain control over a situation. With this new information in hand, the police began to re-examine the evidence from Jennifer's case. They focused on phone records, texts, and emails, looking for any communication between Jennifer and Jared that might link him to her murder. What they found was chilling. In the days leading up to Jennifer's disappearance, she and Jared had exchanged several heated messages. Jared had become increasingly demanding, pressuring Jennifer to meet with him one last time to talk things over. In her final message to him, Jennifer told Jared that she didn't want to see him again, and that their relationship, whatever it had been, was over. On the night of March 2, 2021, just hours before she vanished, Jared sent a final, cryptic message. "You'll regret this." It was the same night that David Collins had sent his own threatening texts to Jennifer, creating a confusing web of suspicion. Detectives now had a new prime suspect, Jared Willis. They tracked him down in Fairview and brought him in for questioning. Under pressure, Jared denied any involvement in Jennifer's death, but admitted to meeting her on the night she disappeared. According to Jared, they had argued, but he claimed she had left him alive and well. But the police weren't convinced. Jared's alibi for the rest of the night was shaky at best, and further investigation revealed that his cell phone had pinged off a tower near the location where Jennifer's body was found. Jared Willis was arrested in November of 2021, just months after David Collins' conviction. His arrest sent shockwaves through Ridgeview, reopening old wounds and casting doubt on David's guilt. The prosecution built a case against Jared, using the text messages, phone records, and his history of obsessive behavior to paint him as the true killer. In May of 2022, Jared went to trial. The defense argued that there was no direct physical evidence linking Jared to the murder, much like in David's case. But this time, the emotional weight of the text messages and Jared's erratic behavior were too much to ignore. The jury deliberated for just 3 days before finding Jared Willis guilty of the murder of Jennifer Daniels. David Collins was exonerated and released from prison shortly after Jared's conviction, but the damage had already been done. His reputation had been tarnished, and he had lost months of his life to a crime he didn't commit. For the people of Ridgeview, the case brought a sense of closure, but the scars of Jennifer's death remained. The town had been forever changed, its sense of safety shattered by the brutal murder of one of its own. Rachel Burns, who had fought so hard to uncover the truth, found little solace in the outcome. Jennifer was gone, and no amount of justice could bring her back. But Rachel knew that without her persistence, the real killer might never have been found. In the end, Jennifer's story was a tragic reminder of the darkness that can hide beneath the surface of even the most peaceful places. Bottom of form.